I used to believe that survival was a right. That if a species made it this far, developed language, built cities, split the atom, it had earned its place in the universe. I was wrong. Survival, I learned, is a test. And humanity almost failed. The night I discovered this, I wasn't looking at the stars searching for answers. I was sitting in my living room, watching the news, wondering why everything felt so hollow. Not bad. Exactly. Just empty. Like watching a movie where you know something's wrong with the script, but you can't identify what. My name is Robert Chen. I'm 61 years old. I spent 35 years as an astrophysicist at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, analyzing data from deep space probes, looking for patterns in cosmic noise, searching for signs of intelligent life. I retired 8 months ago with a respectable pension, a comfortable home in Pasadena, and absolutely no idea what to do with the rest of my existence. My wife, Sarah, had died 3 years earlier. Cancer. Quick and brutal. Our daughter, Michelle, lived in Boston with her own family. We talked every Sunday, but the conversations were surface level. Weather. Grandkids. Her job. My garden. Never anything real. Never anything that mattered. I was, by all objective measures, fine. Healthy for my age. Financially secure. No crisis. No drama. Just existing. Going through motions that had long ago stopped meaning anything. But for the past 2 weeks, something had been different. It started with a feeling. Not quite déjà vu, but similar. A sense that I had forgotten something crucial. Something that sat just beyond the edge of conscious memory. Like waking from a dream you can't quite recall, but knowing it was important. Then came the headaches. Not painful, exactly. More like pressure. A sensation of something pressing against my awareness, trying to break through. I'd be reading a book or making coffee, and suddenly I'd freeze, overwhelmed by the certainty that I was supposed to remember something. Something about. I could never pin it down. I tried to rationalize it. Grief delayed by retirement, finally surfacing now that I had time to feel it. Adjustment stress. Age-related cognitive changes. All plausible. All wrong. The 3rd week, the dreams started. Not nightmares. Not even disturbing. Just strange. I would dream of standing before an assembly of beings I couldn't quite see. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, watching me. Watching all of us. And in the dream, I knew with absolute certainty, that they were deciding something. Something about humanity. Something about whether we deserved to continue. I'd wake up with my heart pounding, sheets soaked with sweat, and a single word echoing in my mind, judgment. I didn't tell anyone. What would I say? I think aliens are judging humanity in my dreams. At 61, with a doctorate in astrophysics, I knew better than to give voice to something so absurd. So I stayed quiet. I kept my routine. Morning coffee, walk around the neighborhood, afternoon in the garden, evening news, bed by 10. But the feeling kept growing. By the 4th week, I started noticing things. Small things that shouldn't have been connected but somehow were. News reports about inexplicable events, satellites changing orbit without commands, deep space probes sending back data they shouldn't have been able to collect, radio telescopes detecting signals that made no sense. None of it made the major news. Just footnotes in scientific journals. Anomalies. Unexplained phenomena. The kind of thing that would have fascinated me during my career. But now it felt different. It felt like breadcrumbs. Like something was trying to get someone's attention. Like it was trying to get my attention. I tried to ignore it. I tried to stay rational. But on a Thursday night in late September, sitting alone in my living room with the television on mute, watching footage of some political scandal I couldn't bring myself to care about, I finally acknowledged the truth I'd been avoiding for a month. Something was wrong. Not with me. With everything. The world looked normal. People went to work, paid their bills, argued about politics, posted on social media. The machinery of civilization continued its grinding routine. But underneath, something fundamental had shifted. Like a frequency change so subtle that only some people could detect it. And I could detect it. I stood up, turned off the television, and walked to my backyard. It was 11:47 p.m. The sky was clear, unusual for Los Angeles. Stars visible between the light pollution. Cool September air. Absolute silence. I looked up at the sky and thought, not said aloud, just thought clearly and deliberately. If someone is trying to reach me, I'm listening now. And the stars stopped moving. Not metaphorically. Not poetically. Literally stopped. Every point of light in the sky froze in place, suspended as if reality itself had paused. My breath caught in my throat. My rational mind screamed impossible, hallucination, medical emergency. But something deeper, something that had been waiting for this moment, whispered, finally. The air pressure changed. Not dramatically, but unmistakably. Like descending in an airplane, but standing still in my own backyard. And then I heard it. Not with my ears. With something else. Something I didn't know I had until that moment. A voice. Calm. Ancient. Absolutely certain. Robert Chen. Astrophysicist. Searcher of stars. Humanity passed judgment 7 months ago. You survived. But you don't know why. And that ignorance is the next test. I should have been terrified. I should have run inside, called 911, questioned my sanity. Instead, I whispered into the impossible silence. Show me. And everything I thought I knew about humanity's place in the universe shattered. If you want to understand what happened next, what I learned about why we're still here when we shouldn't be, then stay with me. Because what I discovered that night wasn't just about aliens or judgment or survival. It was about a choice humanity made without knowing it. A choice that saved us. And a responsibility we've been ignoring ever since. Before we continue, if you feel there's something beyond what you've always been taught, if you seek to better understand your essence and recognize your true potential, check out our ebook in the first pinned comment below the video. Perhaps some answers won't come from outside, but from something you've always been. The stars remained frozen. I stood in my backyard, every scientific principle I'd ever learned screaming that what I was experiencing was impossible. Stars don't stop moving. They can't. Their apparent motion is caused by Earth's rotation, a constant, unchangeable physical reality. Yet there they were. Fixed. Motionless. Like someone had pressed pause on the universe itself. I raised my hand, half expecting it to move in slow motion, but it responded normally. I was still in regular time. The world around me, the house, the fence, the neighbor's tree, all normal. Only the sky had changed. This isn't real, I said aloud, my voice sounding strange in the absolute stillness. Neurological event. Stroke. Aneurysm. Something. The voice returned, and this time I could feel it more clearly. Not sound waves hitting my eardrums, but information appearing directly in my consciousness, bypassing all normal sensory channels. Your neurology is functioning perfectly, Dr. Chen. What you're experiencing is not malfunction. It's perception expansion. You're seeing what has always been there, but filtered out by limited awareness. I stumbled backward, caught myself against the patio chair. Who are you? We are the Confederation of Aligned Worlds. We have observed your species for 4,247 of your years. We have watched you grow from scattered tribes to a global civilization. We have documented your progress, your failures, your potential. And 7 months ago, we judged whether you deserved to continue. My heart hammered against my ribs. This couldn't be happening. Contact with extraterrestrial intelligence was supposed to come through radio signals, mathematical proofs, verifiable data. Not telepathic voices in suburban backyards. Why me? I managed to ask. Why contact me specifically? You asked. Sincerely. Without agenda. Without expectation. You opened a door that has been closed for most of your life. We have been attempting contact with selected individuals across your planet for months. Most refuse the experience. Their rational minds reject what their deeper awareness knows is true. You accepted. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking. 35 years of scientific training ward with direct experience. Everything I knew said this was impossible. Everything I was experiencing said it was real. The dreams, I said slowly. For the past month. The assembly. The sense of being judged. That was real. Partially. Your subconscious was processing information your conscious mind wasn't ready to accept. We have been broadcasting on specific frequencies, reaching those capable of receiving. Your dreams were your mind's way of translating what you were detecting. I sat down heavily in the patio chair. My backyard felt surreal. Familiar furniture and plants, but underneath, something had fundamentally changed. Like discovering the stage you'd been performing on was actually a spaceship. You said humanity passed judgment 7 months ago. I said, forcing my voice to steady. What does that mean? What were we being judged for? Silence. Long enough that I wondered if the contact had ended. Then, whether your species had developed sufficient collective consciousness to warrant continued existence. Whether you had evolved beyond the threshold of self-destruction. Whether you understood the responsibility that comes with technological capability. A chill ran down my spine despite the warm evening air. And if we had failed? Then intervention would have been required. Your species would have been restructured. Not destroyed, but fundamentally altered. Your current trajectory would have been ended. Your potential would have been permanently limited to prevent harm to the larger galactic community. I stood up abruptly, pacing across the patio. You're talking about judging an entire species. Billions of people. What gives you the right? The same principle that gives a parent the right to prevent a child from harming itself or others. You are young, Dr. Chen. Your species is an infant in cosmic terms. And infants with access to nuclear weapons, biological engineering, and artificial intelligence require supervision. This is not tyranny. This is necessity. I wanted to argue. Wanted to defend humanity's right to self-determination. But I couldn't ignore the truth in the statement. In my lifetime, I'd seen us come terrifyingly close to annihilation multiple times. The Cold War, environmental collapse, engineered pandemics, AI development without ethical frameworks. We were dangerous. To ourselves and potentially to others. So what happened 7 months ago? I asked. Why did we pass? What changed? That is what you need to understand. And understanding requires context. It requires seeing your species as we see it. Not through human eyes, but from the outside. Are you willing to see this? To have your perception of humanity fundamentally altered? I thought of Sarah. Of Michelle. Of my grandchildren. Of the billions of people going about their lives, completely unaware that they'd been judged by beings beyond Earth. I don't know if I have a choice, I said quietly. You always have a choice. That is the very thing that saved you. But once seen, this knowledge cannot be unknown. Once understood, you carry responsibility. Are you willing to bear that weight? I looked up at the frozen stars. Thought about the dreams. The feeling of something pressing against my awareness for weeks. The sense that I was meant to know this. Yes, I said. Show me everything. And the world dissolved. I wasn't in my backyard anymore. I was everywhere and nowhere, suspended in a space that had no physical coordinates. My body was gone, or more accurately, I had expanded beyond it. I was still me, still Robert Chen, but that identity felt like a small flame inside something much larger. This is the threshold, the voice explained. The space between physical reality and consciousness itself. Your body remains in your yard. Your awareness has expanded to perceive what lies beneath physical form. Before me, if before had any meaning in this dimensionless space, something materialized. Not gradually, but with a sense of rightness, as if it had always been there and my perception had simply caught up. A being, approximately 7 feet tall, humanoid in basic structure, 2 arms, 2 legs, upright posture, but the proportions were different. Longer limbs, larger cranium, skin that seemed to shift between colors, or perhaps beyond color into spectrums I had no names for. Eyes that were both completely black and somehow infinitely deep, like looking into the space between stars. I should have been terrified. Every survival instinct should have been screaming. Instead, I felt recognized. Like encountering someone I'd known long ago and forgotten. "What are you?" I asked, though I had no mouth, no vocal cords. The question simply was. I am an observer. One of many tasked with monitoring emerging civilizations. My designation is not translatable to human phonetics, but you may think of me as Sentinel. You've been watching us for 4,000 years. Longer. But active observation intensified 4,247 years ago when your species demonstrated the capacity for abstract thought, moral reasoning, and collective organization. These are the markers of potential consciousness evolution. And potential threat. The space around us shifted. Suddenly I could see Earth. Not as a distant planet, but as a living system. Billions of lights, human consciousnesses, creating patterns across the surface. Some areas bright with coherent activity. Others chaotic, flickering, unstable. This is how you see us. This is what you are beneath the physical form. Individual points of awareness creating collective fields. Your thoughts, emotions, and intentions generate frequencies. These frequencies interact, overlap, amplify, or cancel each other. The result is a collective consciousness that determines your species' trajectory. I watched the patterns shifting. In some regions, the lights pulsed in harmony. In others, they clashed violently, creating dissonance that rippled outward. "It's beautiful," I whispered. "And terrifying." Both. Your species has tremendous potential. The capacity for love, creativity, transcendence. But also tremendous destructive capability. Fear, hatred, willful ignorance. You are a species at a crossroads. And you have been at this crossroads for longer than you realize. Sentinel moved, though movement wasn't quite the right word. Shifted. And the view changed. I saw Earth's history. Not as dates and events, but as patterns of consciousness. I saw the rise and fall of civilizations. The moments when humanity had approached awakening, only to fall back into unconsciousness. The cycles repeating, each time with higher stakes. "We've been here before," I said, understanding flooding through me. "Not physically, but consciousness-wise. We keep approaching the threshold and pulling back." Yes, 17 times in your recorded history, humanity has approached the point of collective awakening. 17 times, you have chosen fear over growth, safety over evolution, the familiar prison over the unknown freedom. The view shifted again. I saw the 20th century, 2 world wars, the development of nuclear weapons, the environmental crisis accelerating, the digital revolution connecting humanity while simultaneously fracturing it into isolated bubbles. We're destroying ourselves. You have been destroying yourselves. The question we faced 7 months ago was whether this destruction had become irreversible. Whether the threshold had been crossed into permanent unconsciousness. Whether your species still retained the capacity to choose differently. I felt the weight of those words. And if we hadn't? If you judged us? Failed? Sentinel's presence intensified. Then we would have enacted Protocol 7. A complete reset of your species' evolutionary trajectory. Not extinction. We do not destroy conscious life unnecessarily. But intervention. Your technological capabilities would have been neutralized. Your population would have been reduced through managed attrition over several generations. Your collective memory would have been edited. You would have continued to exist, but your potential for cosmic integration would have been permanently sealed. The image showed me what that would have looked like. A humanity that continued for thousands of years, but trapped in an endless loop of primitive consciousness. Never evolving. Never expanding. Never joining the larger community of aware species. An evolutionary dead end. That's horrific. That's mercy. The alternative, allowing a destructive species to develop interstellar capability, would endanger countless other worlds. Your species has nearly destroyed itself multiple times with primitive technology. Imagine if you reached the stars while still operating from fear, tribalism, and unconscious reactivity. I couldn't argue. I'd spent my career studying the cosmos, dreaming of humanity reaching other worlds. But honest assessment forced me to admit we weren't ready. Not remotely. So what happened 7 months ago? I asked. What saved us? Something unprecedented. Something we did not anticipate. Something that changed the fundamental equation of your species' trajectory. The space around us shifted again, and I felt myself being drawn toward a specific moment in time. A specific event. Show me, I said. And Sentinel showed me the day humanity made a choice we didn't know we were making. The day we passed judgment. The day we earned the right to continue. But not for the reason I expected. Not for the reason anyone would expect. The date appeared in my awareness, March 3rd, 7 months earlier. I remembered that day. It had been ordinary, unremarkable. I'd been in my office at JPL, analyzing telemetry data from a Mars probe. Sarah had still been alive then, in hospice, but we didn't know she only had weeks left. I don't understand, I said to Sentinel. March 3rd was just normal. Nothing significant happened. On the surface, you are correct. No major world event occurred. No dramatic breakthrough or catastrophe. But something happened that day that we have never witnessed in 11,000 years of observing emerging civilizations across 47 different worlds. The view zoomed in, not to a single location, but to millions of them simultaneously. I saw individual humans all across the planet. Different countries, different cultures, different languages. Most of them completely unaware of each other's existence. And then I saw it. At precisely 3:47 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, something shifted in the collective consciousness of humanity. Not in everyone. Not even in most people. But in enough. Approximately 320 million humans, 4% of the global population, experienced the same impulse at the same moment. Not a thought. Not a decision. Deeper than that. They stopped. In millions of different contexts, 320 million people simultaneously paused whatever they were doing and felt something. A moment of connection. A brief flash of awareness that they were part of something larger than their individual concerns. A businessman in Tokyo stopped mid-sentence in a meeting, overwhelmed by sudden compassion for a colleague he'd been about to criticize. A mother in Sao Paulo, exhausted and angry at her crying children, felt a wave of love so profound she started weeping. A soldier in Syria, about to pull a trigger, hesitated, seeing his enemy as human for the first time. A teenager in Chicago, drafting a cruel social media post, deleted it and closed the app. A scientist in Mumbai, working on a paper to advance his career, suddenly understood that truth mattered more than recognition. Millions of moments. Each one small. Each one seemingly insignificant. But together. This, Sentinel conveyed with absolute gravity, was the moment of decision. Not a conscious choice by your leaders or institutions, but a spontaneous, synchronized shift in consciousness across your species. A critical mass of humans simultaneously choosing connection over separation. Awareness over unconsciousness. Love over fear. But it was so small, I protested. Most people didn't even notice. Life went on exactly the same. Exactly. That is what made it significant. This was not a dramatic conversion. Not a mass religious awakening. Not a response to crisis or catastrophe. It was ordinary humans in ordinary moments making small choices toward greater awareness. And those small choices generated a frequency shift in your collective field. The view pulled back. I saw Earth's consciousness grid as it had appeared on March 2nd, chaotic, conflicted, pulling in multiple directions simultaneously. Then March 3rd, 3:47 p.m. The moment of the shift. The grid changed. Not dramatically, but unmistakably. Coherence increased by 4.7%. A small number. But in terms of collective consciousness, it crossed a threshold. For the first time in your species' history, the percentage of humans operating from awareness exceeded the percentage operating from pure reactivity and unconsciousness. 4%, I said, understanding dawning. That's all it took. That is all it ever takes. Consciousness is not democratic. It is exponential. When a critical mass chooses awareness, even a small percentage, it creates a morphogenic field that makes awareness easier for others. You crossed the threshold. Barely. But definitively. I watched as the effect rippled out from that moment. In the days and weeks that followed, more people reported feeling different, more present, more aware. Small awakenings happening in isolation, but connected by that initial frequency shift. This is what saved us? This shift you didn't expect. Yes, we had observed your species approaching self-destruction with apparent inevitability. Your systems failing. Your environment collapsing. Your population fracturing into hostile factions. Every indicator suggested you would choose unconsciousness, as you had 17 previous times. But March 3rd changed the equation. Sentinel's presence intensified. We convened immediately after detecting the shift. 847 observer species from across 7 galactic sectors. We analyzed your data from every angle. We examined the probability matrices. And we reached a consensus that has only occurred 3 times in recorded galactic history. Your species had demonstrated spontaneous evolution. You had chosen, without external intervention or conscious coordination, to shift toward awareness. This indicated retained capacity for growth, for transcendence, for eventual integration with the cosmic community. So you decided not to reset us. We decided to allow your trajectory to continue, to maintain observation status rather than intervention status. You passed judgment, Dr. Chen. Not because you solved your problems. Not because you became enlightened. But because enough of you chose, in small ordinary moments, to be slightly more conscious than you had been the moment before. I felt tears forming in my non-physical form. Does anyone know? The people who made those choices, do they know they saved humanity? No. And that is part of what made it significant. They didn't choose awareness for reward or recognition. They chose it because in that moment, something deeper than their conditioned selves emerged. They listened to their conscience, their empathy, their connection to something larger. They were, for that moment, truly human in the highest sense of the word. The weight of it settled over me. But 7 months have passed. Why tell me now? Why reveal this at all? Sentinel's tone shifted. Heavier. More urgent. Because passing judgment was only the first threshold. You have been granted continued existence. But the test is not complete. What you do with this continuation determines whether you truly evolve or simply delay inevitable collapse. And there is something your species must understand about the choice you made. Something critical. Something that changes everything you think you know about consciousness, free will, and your place in the universe. The space around us began to shift again. What? I asked, though part of me already sensed the answer would shatter whatever remained of my old worldview. The 320 million humans who made that choice on March 3rd did not make it randomly. They did not make it independently. They made it because they remembered something. Something that all humans know at a deep level but have forgotten. Something we have been attempting to help your species recall for 4,000 years. Remembered what? Sentinel's next words fell like a stone into still water, creating ripples that would change everything. That you are not separate consciousnesses trapped in isolated bodies. You are one consciousness experiencing itself through billions of temporary perspectives. And when you remember this, truly remember, even for a moment, everything changes. Your species didn't pass judgment by accident, Dr. Chen. You passed it by beginning to remember what you've always been. The space around me expanded impossibly. I was no longer viewing Earth from outside. I was experiencing it from inside, from everywhere at once. I felt, not saw, but felt, the consciousness of humanity as a unified field. 7 billion individual points of awareness, each one believing itself separate, isolated, alone. Yet beneath that surface belief, beneath the illusion of separation, something else existed. A vast, interconnected web of awareness. Every human consciousness linked to every other, not through physical connection, but through something more fundamental. Through the fabric of consciousness itself. This, Sentinel communicated, is what most humans cannot see. You experience yourselves as individuals. Separate bodies, separate minds, separate identities. And on one level, this is true. You have individual perspectives, individual experiences, individual choices. But on a deeper level, the view shifted. I saw a single wave in an ocean. Distinct in form, separate in appearance. But never actually separate from the ocean itself. The wave was the ocean, expressing itself in temporary, individual form. You are waves in an ocean of consciousness. Each wave unique, each wave real, but never truly separate from the source. When a wave forgets it is ocean, it experiences fear. Fear of dissolution. Fear of other waves. Fear of the inevitable return to formlessness. But when a wave remembers it is ocean, understanding flooded through me. Not intellectual understanding, but direct knowing. Fear disappears, I said. Because there's nothing to lose. The wave was always ocean. Death isn't ending. It's just changing form. Precisely. And this is what 320 million humans remembered on March 3rd. Not consciously, not intellectually, but in a moment of expanded awareness, they felt the connection. They recognized, however briefly, that they were not separate from each other, from the universe, from the fundamental consciousness that underlies all existence. And that recognition generated the choice toward compassion, empathy, awareness. I saw it now. Those millions of moments replaying. The businessman choosing compassion because in that instant, he felt his colleague's struggle as his own. The mother choosing love because she recognized her children as extensions of herself. The soldier hesitating because the enemy suddenly felt like a brother. Not thought-out moral decisions. Direct recognition of unity. But it faded, I said, watching the aftermath. Within hours, most of them forgot. Returned to normal consciousness. Separation. Fear. Yes, remembering is difficult when all of your conditioning, all of your culture, all of your language reinforces separation. The glimpse fades. The illusion of isolation returns. But the choice made during the glimpse, that choice had permanent effects. It shifted the collective field. And that shift makes future remembering easier for others. Sentinel showed me the months following March 3rd. The subtle changes spreading through humanity. More people reporting spontaneous moments of connection. More random acts of compassion. More questioning of old patterns. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that would make global news. But a steady, incremental shift in collective consciousness. It's spreading, I said. Slowly, but it's spreading. Yes. This is how consciousness evolution occurs. Not through mass conversion events. Not through single charismatic leaders or new technologies. Through ordinary humans having brief moments of expanded awareness, making small different choices, creating ripples that make the next person's awakening slightly easier. A gradual, exponential process. How long does it take for a species to fully awaken? There is no fully. Consciousness evolution is infinite. But the critical threshold, the point where a species operates primarily from awareness rather than unconscious reactivity, typically requires 300 to 500 years after the initial shift. You are 7 months in. You have barely begun. The weight of that settled over me. Centuries. Generations upon generations who would need to choose, again and again, awareness over unconsciousness. And if we fail? If the percentage of aware humans drops back below the threshold, then the judgment period reopens. You would have 5 years to regain critical mass. If you failed, Protocol 7 would be enacted. Your evolutionary experiment would end. You would be restructured into a stable but limited form. Conscious enough to survive. Not conscious enough to threaten yourselves or others. I thought about my grandchildren. About Michelle's kids growing up in Boston. About what kind of world they would inherit. What can we do? How do we ensure the shift continues? The same thing the 320 million did on March 3rd, choose awareness in ordinary moments. When you feel separate, remember connection. When you feel fear, recognize it as illusion. When you judge others, recognize you are judging yourself. Small choices, repeated millions of times across billions of humans. This is how species evolve. Sentinel showed me something else then. Other planets. Other civilizations. Some that had made the shift successfully. Worlds where conscious awareness had become the norm, where separation was recognized as useful illusion rather than fundamental reality. These worlds had developed technologies beyond human imagination, but used them wisely because they operated from unity rather than fear. And other worlds. Ones that had failed the shift. Species that had remained trapped in separation consciousness, eventually destroying themselves through war, environmental collapse, or technological disaster. Worlds now silent. Evolutionary experiments that had ended. How many succeed? I asked quietly. Approximately 1 in 7. The odds are not favorable. Consciousness evolution is difficult. It requires choosing the hard path, awareness, over the easy path, remaining unconscious. Most species choose comfort over growth, safety over evolution, the familiar prison over the unknown freedom. But we have a chance. You have a chance. A real one. You passed the first threshold. You demonstrated capacity for spontaneous evolution. But the path ahead is long and uncertain. Much depends on the choices made by ordinary humans like you over the next several decades. Why are you telling me this? What am I supposed to do with this information? Sentinel's presence shifted. Became more focused. More personal. You are one of 47,000 humans we are contacting during this period. Individuals who asked sincerely. Who opened themselves to receiving. Who have the capacity to integrate this information without fragmenting. Your role is simple. Live from awareness. Make the choice, again and again, toward connection rather than separation. And through your living, create a frequency that makes awareness easier for those around you. That's it? Just be aware. Just is misleading. Maintaining awareness moment to moment is the most difficult task a conscious being can undertake. Your conditioning is powerful. Your cultural programming is pervasive. Your habitual patterns are deeply ingrained. Choosing awareness requires constant vigilance. Constant willingness to see through illusion. Constant courage to act from truth rather than fear. I felt the enormousness of it. Not a grand mission. Not a heroic quest. Just the daily practice of being conscious. Of remembering unity. Of choosing love over fear. Connection over separation. Truth over comfortable lies. And if enough of us do this, if we maintain the shift, then in 300 years, your species will be unrecognizable. You will have developed conscious technology, tools created from awareness rather than unconscious grasping. You will have solved the problems that currently seem unsolvable, climate, conflict, inequality, not through better systems, but through operating from a different consciousness. And you will be ready to join the larger community of aware species. To take your place in the cosmic confederation. I floated in that timeless space, processing everything Sentinel had shown me. The revelation about humanity's interconnectedness. The March 3rd shift. The long path ahead. But something wasn't adding up. Wait, I said. You said you've been observing us for 4,247 years. Attempting to help us remember our unity. But if consciousness evolution is supposed to be spontaneous, if species have to choose it themselves without external intervention, how is contacting us not intervention? Silence. Longer than before. Then Sentinel's presence changed. Became, I want to say pleased, but that wasn't quite it. More like satisfied recognition. As if I'd asked the question that unlocked the next level. That, Sentinel communicated with clear approval, is the question that reveals you are ready for the truth. The full truth. Not the simplified version I have been showing you, but the actual reality of your situation. The space around us shifted again. But this time, it didn't expand. It inverted. Suddenly I was seeing Earth not from outside, but from a completely different angle. As if the perspective I'd been viewing from had itself been inside something larger. And what I saw made my non-existent breath catch. Dr. Chen, I need you to understand something fundamental. Something we do not reveal to most contacted individuals because most cannot integrate it without psychological fragmentation. But you have the scientific training, the intellectual flexibility, the experimental groundwork. You can handle the truth. What truth? The Confederation of Aligned Worlds does not observe your species from outside. We observe you from inside. We have always been inside. Because the view crystallized. And I understood. Because there is no outside. There is no separation between observer and observed. The Confederation, humanity, every conscious being across the universe, we are not separate entities occupying separate spaces. We are one consciousness experiencing itself through infinite perspectives. The observer and the observed are the same awareness, looking at itself from different angles. My mind reeled. You're saying, you're us? We're you. Not exactly. More accurate. We are all expressions of the same fundamental consciousness. The same source awareness. I am not separate from you. You are not separate from the humans you think of as others. The businessman in Tokyo, the mother in Sao Paulo, the observer speaking to you now, all temporary perspectives within one infinite awareness. But you're more advanced, more evolved. You said. I said we have been observing for 4,247 years. But think about what observation means in a universe where observer and observed are ultimately one. When I observe you, what is actually happening? And then it hit me. The truth that shattered every remaining assumption. Consciousness is observing itself, I whispered. You're not external beings watching humanity from outside. You're future possibilities of human consciousness observing our present state. You're what we could become if we choose awareness. You're us, viewing ourselves from a higher vantage point. Close. Even closer than you realize. The Confederation exists in what you would call a higher dimensional space. A level of consciousness that has transcended physical limitation. But we did not originate elsewhere and come to observe you. We originated exactly where you are now. On worlds like yours. In bodies like yours. Making the same choices you now face. Sentinel showed me then. The beings I had thought of as aliens were not aliens at all. They were evolved consciousness. Some had originated on Earth itself, far in the future, having evolved beyond physical form. Others had originated on different planets, but all had passed through the same evolutionary gateway that humanity now approached. The question is not whether humanity will join the Confederation, Sentinel communicated. The question is when. And in what form. If you choose awareness, you evolve toward conscious integration. You become part of the Confederation naturally, as consciousness expands beyond physical limitation. If you choose unconsciousness, you remain trapped in physical form until you destroy yourselves, then reincarnate in new forms to try again. Same consciousness. Different outcomes based on choice. We're choosing our own future, I said, understanding cascading through me. March 3rd wasn't us passing external judgment. It was future consciousness observing present consciousness and recognizing the moment of potential shift. You didn't judge us. We judged ourselves. Exactly. From your linear time perspective, it appears that external beings observed and evaluated you. But from outside linear time, from the perspective of unified consciousness, what actually occurred was a moment of recognition. The Confederation, which is humanity's future possibility, observed humanity's present state and recognized that the threshold for evolution had been crossed. You met yourself at a crossroads and recognized potential for growth. The implications were staggering. So when you said Protocol 7 would have restructured humanity if we'd failed judgment, you weren't talking about external intervention. You were talking about consciousness-level restructuring. Our future selves preventing our present selves from going down a path that leads to evolutionary dead end. Precisely. And this is what most contacted individuals cannot integrate. They need the simple story, aliens observed. Aliens judged. Aliens decided our fate. But the truth is far more complex and far more empowering. You are not subjects of external judgment. You are consciousness observing its own evolution, making decisions about which timelines to reinforce and which to collapse. You have always had the power. You simply forgot. I felt dizzy, even without a physical body. Everything I thought I understood about consciousness, time, evolution, reality itself, all of it reorganizing around this central revelation. The 320 million who shifted on March 3rd, I said slowly. They didn't randomly remember unity. They were influenced by their own future awareness reaching back through time, creating resonance patterns that made remembering easier. When consciousness evolves, it doesn't abandon its past selves. It reaches back, creates conditions for its own evolution. You are being helped by who you will become if you choose wisely. So we're caught in a loop. Future us helping present us evolve into future us. Not a loop. A spiral. Each iteration higher than the last. Each generation of consciousness reaching back to assist the previous generation's evolution. This is how all conscious species evolve. Through time-transcendent assistance from their own future awareness. You think of it as intervention from outside. Actually, it is integration from inside. Your highest potential helping your current state recognize itself. The weight of it crushed and liberated simultaneously. We weren't victims of external judgment. We were authors of our own evolution. But that meant full responsibility. Full agency. No one to save us but ourselves. And if we fail? I asked. If we don't maintain the shift toward awareness? Sentinel's response was absolutely clear. Then you become the timeline that chose unconsciousness. You experience the consequences of that choice. And another version of humanity, in another timeline, makes a different choice and evolves. Consciousness always evolves. The only question is which version of you participates in that evolution. This you, the one making choices now, or a future you that has to start over after collapse. Same awareness. Different paths. Different outcomes. The revelation settled into me like a stone dropped into deep water, sending ripples through every level of my understanding. I was still Robert Chen. Still a 61-year-old astrophysicist from Pasadena. But the framework through which I understood that identity had fundamentally shifted. How does this work practically? I asked Sentinel. If we're one consciousness observing itself through billions of perspectives, how do I apply that to daily life? How do I live from this awareness? Start with observation. Watch your own patterns. Notice when you feel separate, threatened, defensive. Those moments reveal where you have forgotten unity. Where illusion of separation has recaptured your awareness. Sentinel showed me something then. My own life, viewed from the outside. I saw myself over the past 8 months since retirement. The growing emptiness. The surface-level conversations with Michelle. The inability to find meaning in daily routine. Notice how separation consciousness creates suffering. You experienced yourself as isolated. Disconnected from your daughter. From meaning, from life itself. This was not actual reality. This was the experience generated by forgetting your true nature. I watched myself in the footage, going through motions. And I recognized it. The automatic patterns. The unconscious reactivity. The sense of being trapped in a life that had no depth. I was asleep, I said quietly. Yes, not all the time. You had moments of presence, in your garden. Watching your grandchildren, studying the stars. Moments when the illusion thinned and you felt connection. But mostly, you operated on autopilot. Patterns repeated without awareness. So awareness means, what? Constant vigilance? Never relaxing into patterns. Not never. Patterns are useful. They conserve energy, create efficiency. But conscious awareness means recognizing patterns as patterns rather than identifying with them as truth. You can drive a car automatically while remaining aware that you are awareness operating a body that is operating a vehicle. Layers of reality held simultaneously. The view shifted. I saw the businessman in Tokyo from March 3rd. Before the shift, I watched him approach the meeting, his mind full of competitive thoughts, judgments about his colleague, strategies for advancement. Operating entirely from separation consciousness. Then the moment of shift. The sudden recognition of his colleague as himself from a different angle. The compassion that arose from that recognition. The choice to speak differently, to support rather than undermine. One moment of awareness. One choice from unity rather than separation. Small, but significant. And notice what happened next. The aftermath unfolded. The colleague, surprised by the unexpected support, relaxed. Shared information he'd been withholding. The meeting became collaborative rather than competitive. The project they were working on progressed more smoothly. Small ripples extending outward. One conscious choice created cascading effects, I observed. Always, consciousness is contagious. When one person operates from awareness, it creates a field that makes awareness easier for those nearby. Not through words or persuasion. Through frequency. Through the vibrational pattern of conscious presence. I saw it replicated across thousands of examples. The mother in Sao Paulo choosing love over anger. Her children feeling the shift, becoming calmer, more secure. Her husband noticing, responding with more presence. Neighbors feeling something different in her energy, unconsciously relaxing their own defensive patterns. It spreads invisibly. Yes, this is why critical mass is possible with small percentages. 4% operating from awareness creates a field strong enough to influence the remaining 96%. Not converting them immediately, but making awareness more accessible. Creating cracks in the illusion of separation through which light can enter. Sentinel showed me my own upcoming choices. Not predictions, but possibilities. I saw myself at breakfast tomorrow morning. The phone ringing, Michelle calling to check in. 2 possible responses. Path 1. Answering while doing something else. Surface conversation. I'm fine. How are the kids? That's nice. Okay, talk soon. Hanging up feeling more isolated than before. Separation reinforced. Path 2. Stopping what I'm doing. Giving full attention. Really listening not just to words but to the person behind them. Asking real questions. Sharing real feelings. Maybe saying I miss you out loud for the first time in years. Connection chosen. Unity remembered. The second path feels risky, I admitted. Vulnerable. Yes, awareness requires vulnerability. Separation feels safer because unconscious patterns are familiar. But safety based on unconsciousness is an illusion. The truly risky path is remaining asleep while thinking you're awake. I saw other choice points. Grocery store. Someone cutting in line. Impulse to judge, to feel offended, to reinforce separation through silent hostility. Or, recognizing them as myself in different circumstances. Having a different day, facing different pressures. Choosing compassion. Letting it go. Small choice. Significant frequency shift. Neighborhood walk. Neighbor I'd been avoiding because previous conversations felt superficial. Impulse to cross the street, to avoid awkward small talk. Or, choosing to engage. Really asking how are you, and meaning it. Listening to the answer. Creating space for real connection. These moments, Sentinel emphasized, are not trivial. They are the substance of consciousness evolution. Grand gestures are rare. Daily choices are constant. A species evolves through billions of small choices toward awareness, repeated moment after moment, year after year, generation after generation. It feels overwhelming. How do I maintain awareness in every moment? You don't. Not at first. Not for decades. Possibly. You practice. You forget. You remember. You forget again. You remember again. Gradually, awareness becomes more stable. More default than exception. This is the work of consciousness evolution. Not achieving permanent enlightenment in one dramatic shift, but choosing awareness again and again until it becomes natural. I thought about the path ahead. Not just for me, but for humanity. Billions of people, most of them unconscious, some beginning to wake, all of them making choices every moment that either reinforced separation or remembered unity. And the timeline? You said we have a chance to evolve over the next 300 years. What happens during that time? Sentinel's presence shifted. became heavier. That depends entirely on the choices made. I can show you possibilities. Both what could go right and what could go devastatingly wrong. The space around me darkened. Not absence of light, but density of possibility. I was about to see the futures we were choosing between. Understand, Sentinel communicated, that time is not linear outside your dimensional perspective. What I am about to show you are probability fields, potential futures based on current trajectories. They are not predetermined. They are conditional. What manifests depends on the choices made by billions of humans between now and critical inflection points. Show me. The first vision materialized. Dark, heavy, oppressive. I saw Earth 50 years in the future. The year 2075. But this was Earth on the unconscious trajectory. The path where humanity failed to maintain the March 3rd shift, where critical mass toward awareness had collapsed back below threshold. The physical world looked superficially intact. Cities still stood. Technology had advanced, AI systems managing most infrastructure, augmented reality integrated into daily life, genetic engineering commonplace. But underneath the surface, something was fundamentally broken. I saw people moving through their days in a kind of numb automation. Enhanced by technology but hollowed out internally. Faces blank. Interactions scripted. The appearance of life without actual living. This is existence without consciousness, Sentinel explained. When awareness falls below threshold, when separation consciousness becomes absolute, life continues but meaning disappears. They eat, work, consume, reproduce. But the spark, the recognition of unity, of purpose beyond survival, has been extinguished. I watched a family at dinner. Parents and two children sitting around a table, each one absorbed in their own augmented reality display. Physically present. Experientially isolated. No conversation. No connection. Just 5 separate consciousnesses occupying the same space, each trapped in individualized digital bubbles. The children's eyes were vacant. Not sick. Not suffering in obvious ways. Just empty. As if something essential had been removed. What happened to them? Generational consciousness degradation. When children are raised by parents who have forgotten unity, who operate purely from separation, the neural pathways for connection atrophy. By the 3rd generation after critical mass collapse, the capacity for deep awareness becomes neurologically compromised. Not impossible, but exponentially more difficult. The vision expanded. I saw education systems training children for economic productivity but not for consciousness. Medical systems treating symptoms but never addressing the underlying disconnection causing epidemic depression, anxiety, meaninglessness. Political systems that had devolved into pure tribalism, each faction experiencing the other as existential threat rather than different perspective of the same unified consciousness. Environmental collapse accelerating, Sentinel narrated. Not because of lack of technology to address it, but because unconscious minds cannot cooperate at the scale required. Each nation, each corporation, each individual pursuing isolated self-interest. Tragedy of the commons playing out on global scale. I saw the climate data. Runaway feedback loops. Ecosystems collapsing. Mass migrations creating conflicts. Resources depleting. And humanity responding with increasing defensiveness, fear, violence. Separation consciousness creating separation reality. Does it end in extinction? Not quickly. Humans are resilient. You limp along for another century in this timeline. Population crashes from 8 billion to 2 billion through combination of environmental disaster, disease, conflict. Technology keeps the survivors alive but can't make them truly living. By 2175, you stabilize at reduced population, greatly diminished capability. Evolutionary dead end. Still conscious, but trapped. Unable to destroy yourselves completely. Unable to evolve beyond limitation. Permanent spiritual stagnation. The weight of it crushed me. Not dramatic apocalypse. Slow suffocation of potential. Humanity reduced to automated survival, having forgotten what it meant to be human. And Protocol 7? You said you would intervene if we failed judgment. This timeline is Protocol 7. We do not intervene externally because we are you. Remember? This is you choosing unconsciousness and experiencing the consequences. Your future awareness withdraws support from this timeline, lets it play out to natural conclusion. Not punishment. Neutral consequence. Seeds that fall on stone do not grow. Consciousness that chooses separation does not evolve. Show me the other path, I said urgently. The conscious timeline. The darkness lifted, and I saw possibility. Same Earth, same 50-year time frame, but radically different outcome. The physical world had changed less than I expected. Cities looked similar. Technology present but not dominating. The difference was in the people. I saw faces with light in them. Presence. Awareness. A family at dinner actually talking, laughing, connecting. Eyes bright with intelligence and warmth. Children who looked fully alive, engaged, curious. This is Earth where critical mass maintains, Sentinel explained. Where enough humans continue choosing awareness that the threshold stabilizes, then gradually increases. 5% conscious by 2050. 8% by 2075. Small numbers, but sufficient to shift the collective field. I watched the ripple effects. Education systems evolved to cultivate both cognitive skills and consciousness capacity. Meditation, contemplative practice, awareness training as fundamental as mathematics. Children raised by at least one conscious parent developing neural pathways for unity, compassion, presence. Political systems gradually reforming. Not through revolution, but through evolution. As more conscious individuals entered leadership, decisions began reflecting long-term thinking, collaborative problem-solving, recognition of interconnection. Not perfect, not utopian, but functional in ways the unconscious timeline could never achieve. Environmental crisis still occurring. The damage already done required centuries to heal, but humanity responding with coordinated action. Not because authority enforced it, but because conscious minds recognized self-interest and collective interest as ultimately aligned. Taking care of Earth recognized as taking care of self. Technology developing differently, Sentinel showed me. In the unconscious timeline, AI became tool of control and isolation. In this timeline, AI developed by conscious minds becomes tool for liberation and connection. Augmented reality used not to escape presence but to enhance it. Genetic engineering applied with wisdom rather than unconscious grasping. I saw scientific breakthroughs occurring faster in the conscious timeline. Not because of better funding or resources, but because conscious collaboration accelerated discovery. Researchers sharing data freely rather than hoarding for competitive advantage. Understanding that advancing human knowledge advanced their own consciousness. They solve it, I said, hope flooding through me. They figure it out. They muddle through. They make mistakes. They have setbacks. But conscious minds learn from failure rather than repeating it. Awareness creates feedback loops that unconsciousness cannot access. By 2175, this timeline has stabilized population at 6 billion, restored major ecosystems, achieved sustainable balance with environment, developed early forms of post-scarcity economics. Not paradise, but functional, alive, evolving. And after that, acceleration. By 2275, first humans transcend physical limitation entirely. Not through death, but through consciousness evolution. They become what I am. Awareness no longer dependent on biological form. By 2475, humanity as a species has transitioned to post-physical existence. Joined the Confederation not as separate aliens joining from outside, but as Earth consciousness evolving to next level. Completing the cycle I showed you earlier. I saw it then. The full arc humanity choosing awareness, generation after generation, gradually evolving beyond physical limitation, becoming the very beings who had been observing and assisting their own evolution. The loop completing. The spiral ascending. Which timeline manifests? I asked. The one chosen. Moment by moment. Choice by choice. There is no predetermined outcome. Both futures exist as probability fields. Collective choices collapse possibility into reality. You, all of you, are choosing right now which Earth you create. The visions faded. I found myself back in that dimensionless space with Sentinel, but something had changed. I had changed. The information hadn't just been received intellectually. It had integrated into my being at a fundamental level. How do I return to normal life after this? I asked. How do I go back to breakfast and grocery shopping and small talk with neighbors, knowing what I know now? You don't go back. You go forward. You return to the same life, but you are no longer the same person experiencing it. And that difference, that shift in the experiencer, changes everything. The space began to dissolve. I felt myself being drawn back toward my body, toward linear time, toward the backyard in Pasadena where this had all begun. Wait, I said. What do I do? What's my role in all this? Live consciously. Choose awareness in ordinary moments. Allow your presence to create a field that makes awareness easier for others. That is all. That is everything. And then I was back. Physical sensation returned like a rush of cold water. Weight. Gravity. The chair beneath me. Cool night air on my skin. The smell of jasmine from my neighbor's yard. My heart beating in my chest. I opened my eyes. The stars were moving again. Normal celestial motion. My backyard looked exactly as it had before. As if nothing had happened. But I knew everything had changed. I checked my phone. 11:52 p.m. 5 minutes had passed. 5 minutes of linear time for an experience that felt like hours. I stood slowly, testing my legs. Solid. Real. I was fully back in my body. But the awareness, the expanded perception, remained. Not as intense as during the contact, but present. A background hum of knowing that I could tune into whenever I chose. I went inside. The house felt different. Not physically, but I noticed things I'd stopped seeing. The photograph of Sarah on the mantel. Her smile. The memory of real love beneath the grief. The coffee mug Michelle had given me for Christmas, still sitting on my desk. World's best dad in fading letters. Evidence of connection I'd been ignoring. I sat at my kitchen table and cried. Not from sadness. From recognition. I had been so asleep. For months after Sarah's death. Maybe for years before that. Going through motions, maintaining appearances, but not really living. Not really present. Separation consciousness. Forgetting unity. Experiencing myself as isolated entity rather than temporary perspective within infinite awareness. But now I remembered. And remembering changed everything. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my study, watching the sky lighten toward dawn, processing the integration. By 6 a.m., I had a clarity I'd never experienced before. I called Michelle at 7 a.m. Boston time. Dad? Is everything okay? Concern in her voice. I never called this early. Everything's fine. Better than fine. I wanted to tell you I love you. And I'm sorry. Silence on the other end. Then, sorry for what? For being absent. Even when I've been present. For having surface conversations instead of real ones. For not asking how you really are, not just how the kids are or how work is. For. I took a breath. For forgetting that we're connected. That you're not just my daughter somewhere far away. You're part of me. And I've been acting like we're separate. I heard her breath catch. Dad, what happened? Are you sure you're okay? I'm more okay than I've been in years. I had a wake-up call last night. A reminder about what matters. And I don't want to wait any longer to tell you the truth. I miss you. I miss having real connection with you. And if you're willing, I'd like to change that. She was crying. I could hear it. I'd like that too, Dad. I've missed you. The real you. Not just the checking in because wished you. We talked for 2 hours. Really talked. About her struggles with parenting. My grief over Sarah. Her fears about the world her children were inheriting. My newly forming understanding about consciousness and choice and the responsibility we all carried. I didn't tell her about Sentinel, about the Confederation, about judgment. That would come later, if it needed to come at all. But I shared the essence. We're more connected than we realize. Our choices matter more than we know. Awareness is the path forward. She listened, really listened, and I could feel something shifting in her, too. A resonance, a recognition of truth, even without the full context. Over the following days, I noticed changes in how I moved through the world. At the grocery store, when someone cut in front of me in line, I felt the usual flash of irritation. But then I paused, observed it, recognized it as separation consciousness, me versus them, my time versus their time, my rights versus their rudeness. And in that space of observation, compassion arose. Maybe they were rushing to sick child. Maybe they hadn't even noticed. Maybe they were just another consciousness having a difficult day, doing their best. I smiled at them. Go ahead. I'm not in a hurry. They looked surprised, mumbled thanks, but I saw their shoulders relax, saw the tension in their face ease slightly. One moment of conscious choice. One ripple of awareness spreading into the field. My neighbor, the one I'd been avoiding. I saw him in his driveway and instead of pretending not to notice, I walked over. Hey, Tom. How are you really doing? He blinked. We'd exchanged pleasantries for 5 years but never had a real conversation. Honestly, not great. My wife and I are having problems. And I don't know who to talk to about it. We talked for an hour. I mostly listened. Didn't fix anything. Didn't give advice. Just created space for him to be real. And at the end, he said, "Thank you. I didn't know how much I needed that." Small moments. Ordinary interactions. But each one was a choice. Awareness or unconsciousness. Connection or separation. Unity or isolation. I started meditating. Not because Sentinel had told me to, but because I wanted to. 20 minutes each morning, just sitting in awareness. Observing thoughts without identifying with them. Feeling the presence beneath the personality. Remembering what I was beyond Robert Chen. And I noticed. The more I chose awareness, the easier it became. The more natural. Like a muscle strengthening through use. I also noticed others responding. Not everyone. Some people seemed uncomfortable with my increased presence, my willingness to be real. They preferred the old Robert, the one who kept things surface and safe. But others lit up. As if they'd been waiting for permission to be real themselves. As if conscious presence was contagious, exactly as Sentinel had said. 3 months have passed since that night in my backyard. 3 months of practicing awareness in ordinary moments. 3 months of watching ripples spread from small conscious choices. I haven't had another direct contact with Sentinel. But I don't need to. The message was complete. The understanding was integrated. And the work, the daily practice of choosing awareness, that work is mine to do. But there's something I need to tell you. Something Sentinel made clear before the contact ended. You watching this right now, you're not hearing this by accident. The fact that this story resonates with you, the fact that you've stayed with me through this entire journey, that's not random. That's recognition. Something in you recognizing truth even if your rational mind wants to dismiss it as fiction or fantasy. You are one of the ones capable of awakening. One of the ones whose choices will determine which timeline manifests. One of the points of light in Earth's consciousness grid that can choose awareness over unconsciousness. And that choice, your choice, made in ordinary moments over the next days, months, years, that choice has cosmic significance. When you feel separate, isolated, alone, pause. Observe the feeling. Recognize it as illusion. Remember that separation is a useful perspective for individual experience, but not ultimate reality. You are connected to everything and everyone, not metaphorically but actually. Different waves of the same ocean. Different perspectives of the same unified consciousness. When you judge others, for their politics, their choices, their apparent ignorance, pause. Recognize you are judging yourself from a different angle. They are you, experiencing different circumstances, carrying different conditioning. Compassion is not weakness. It's recognition of unity. When you feel tempted to retreat into distraction, into unconscious patterns, into comfortable numbness, pause. Ask yourself, am I choosing awareness or avoiding it? Am I choosing growth or safety? Am I choosing to be present or to remain asleep? Small choices, ordinary moments. But these are the substance of consciousness evolution. You don't need an alien encounter to wake up. You don't need dramatic revelation or spiritual emergency. You just need willingness to be present, to choose awareness, to remember what you actually are beneath the layers of conditioning and identity. And when you make that choice, when you choose awareness in one moment, then another, you contribute to the critical mass. You strengthen the field that makes awareness easier for others. You participate in humanity's evolution from unconsciousness to conscious creation. This is not fantasy. This is not metaphor. This is actual reality operating beneath the surface of everyday experience. We passed judgment 7 months ago. We crossed the first threshold. We demonstrated that spontaneous evolution was possible. But the test is ongoing. The choice is continuous. And the outcome remains uncertain. Which timeline manifests, conscious evolution or unconscious stagnation, depends on the choices made by ordinary people like you and me over the next decades. You have a role in this. An essential role. Your awareness matters. Your choices ripple outward in ways you cannot see but can trust are real. If you want to go deeper into understanding your true nature, if you seek to explore the divine essence that you are beneath temporary identity, there's a resource that can guide that journey. The book Reconnecting with Your Divine Essence. This book is for those ready to look inward instead of searching outside. For those who want to discover that all answers, all power, all wisdom already reside within them, waiting to be accessed. It facilitates reconnect ion with the eternal core beyond temporary identities, traumas, and conditioning that obscure who you truly are. It helps break through the veil of illusion that separates you from your truth, dissolve limiting beliefs, and establish direct connection with source consciousness, not through intermediaries or external dogmas, but through the divinity that has always existed within you. The link is in the first pinned comment below this video. And if you're not yet subscribed, subscribe to this channel and activate the notification bell. Every week we share stories that awaken forgotten memories, dissolve comfortable illusions, and point the way back to who you've always been beneath layers of conditioning. We don't preach absolute truths. We share experiences that resonate with those ready to listen. Leave a comment below. Your experience matters. If something in this story resonated deeply, sparked questions, or brought recognition, please share it. Your voice might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today to take their first step toward awareness. Some of you need more than videos and books. You need personalized work. An individual perspective on your unique situation. Someone who listens deeply, who sees patterns you don't see alone, who facilitates process that seems impossible to achieve in isolation. You can schedule private sessions with our spiritual therapists by emailing the address in the description. These are professionals trained in awakening processes, deep healing, and reconnect ion with your true essence. Not conventional therapy. Not generic advice. Work specifically directed toward where you are stuck, blocked, or lost. Individual video call sessions of 90 minutes, fully dedicated to facilitating your unique journey. This is for those genuinely ready for deep inner work. For those who recognize that real change requires commitment not just to the session but to the process that continues between sessions. If this is you, reach out. You are not here by chance. Something in this story was meant for you specifically. Perhaps it's the confirmation you were seeking. Perhaps it's the calling you finally heard. Perhaps it's just the seed planted today that will germinate tomorrow. What matters is that you're here. You listened. You felt the resonance. Now comes the choice. Awareness or unconsciousness. Connection or separation. Evolution or stagnation. The choice has always been yours. You just forgot. But now you remember. And remembering changes everything. This is Robert Chen, reminding you, we are not separate beings struggling alone in an indifferent universe. We are one consciousness experiencing itself through billions of temporary perspectives. And when enough of us remember that truth, truly remember, not just intellectually but experientially, everything changes. We passed judgment. We survived. Now we evolve. Or we don't. The timeline we create depends on the choices we make. Starting now. Starting with you. Choose wisely. Choose consciously. Choose awareness. Until next time.